Alrighty y'all, so in today's video, I'm going to be giving you a full tour of my new off-grid workshop. Let's go. So as you can see, we've been working on it. Some of the windows are still not trimmed out and need to be resealed. Holy crap. Redo that, cut that out.
Yeah, we won't leave that in.
Alrighty y'all, welcome to my off-grid workshop. What do you want to do first? Alrighty. So, as you walk in the door, you see all of it, pretty much. It's just one big open room, open concept, because it's a workshop, so that's how I wanted it. As you can see right now, we are running 100% off of solar power for all of our lights and smaller equipment, charging batteries and many things like that. So our solar panels are on this side of the wall, and then that comes into our OPEZ 1800 watt solar generator, which powers all of our tools, equipment, battery charging, lights, and everything like that. We'll get into that later. Alrighty, so the first thing I want to show y'all, and before we start, it is a mess, and I'm working on it. That's why I'm working towards getting this all organized. So as we do these videos, you will see that I will be getting to make more stuff to make this shop organized and run better and better and better. So this will be an ongoing series of working on this off-grid workshop, getting it to that full potential that I want it to be. That way, everything will run like an oiled machine, hopefully. So the first thing I'm gonna start with is something that I've been working on recently, which is a dust collection system for this shop. So we just finished installing most of all this dust collection system. I've had a little bit of dust collection for this shop in the past, but it's mainly been for the miter saw and a port and 2 ports. It was 3 ports. It was 1, 2, and 3, and it was just straight across and down into a shop vac. That was pretty much just a glorified shop vac extension. Now I have a much more legit system that's still DIY and budget friendly, which we'll get into later in the video. Alrighty, also, I want to show you one of my new, latest, and most important tools that I have been wanting to get for a while in this workshop, which is my 13-inch Wen spiral planer. I also purchased this Wen planer with the stand, with the rolling heads. That way the lumber can easily roll in and out of it, and that makes it extremely useful. No, I am not sponsored by Wen, but I wish I was, because I just bought a lot of their stuff. So, I just really like their tools. It's all steel, this whole thing, and it's very high quality for affordable price, which I like. So, this is a 13-inch spiral planer that can go up to 6 inches tall. So it can do about that tall, like beams. You can practically run through this thing. And what this is great for is, if you didn't know already, we have Woodland Mills 32-inch sawmill out there, and we sawmill a lot of rough lumber. Now, to turn that rough lumber into fine lumber, like that on that rack over there, that way it's ready to be made into furniture, casings, doors, and any other projects that I want to do, it needs to be smoothed out. Before all of this was done with an orbital sander or a belt sander. That is a lot of work. So having a planer like this, just being able to take a rough off the sawmill. Now, I know some people are going to be blowing up the comments saying, oh, I love rough lumber, I want to make it smoother, whatever. Yes, you would, because it is very tricky to make stuff square and perfect with very rough lumber. And no matter how tuned in you have that sawmill, lumber still varies a little bit. Whether the blade hits a knot and goes up a little, you can run it through this thing, have it all square. Now, that leads into the next tool. Alrighty, y'all, so this is another tool that I just added to my workshop, and I just finished up this rough little table, and I have yet to put the wheels on it like I did on my router table. That will raise it up to a normal height. So it is kind of low, so bear with me. This is my new 6-inch Wen joiner. So this is a spiral joiner with all those same teeth as the planer. So it is very nice to have interchangeable. Once I found a good brand, I wanted to stay to it, because then stuff is kind of universal in between. So I like that. So having it, if I need to upgrade the teeth or just have a pack just in case it ever gets nicked by a nail or anything, I can have them for this thing and for that, and they fit the same. And also, we'll be testing out all these tools for months and months. I already like them a lot, and I think they'll be good and reliable. They come with wonderful warranties, and lots of people have been happy with their stuff, but I'm gonna put it to the real test, and I'll tell you all the truth when it's been tested for a couple of years. This is a joiner. So what this is for is squaring up lumber. So say, let me grab a piece of lumber, for example. Now this has already been planed but not jointed. So as you can see, this is just a normal 2x4 from like any Home Depot or Lowe's, and you could see this edge is kind of rough. Now this has already been planed and jointed, but when they plane and joint rough, like number 3 lumber like this, or just like a rough, like say it's just a stud, they're not gonna be choosing it to make sure when they're running it through the planer. You know, this is all done on mass operation. So it's going through there and you get crappy wood with bark all over it and a bunch of junk and big old knots and stuff like that. Now, and most of the time it's not square, there's dips and valleys and stuff, unless you go to that little section in the Home Depot where 2x4s are like 30 bucks each and they're perfect without knots and they're sanded. Pretty much what that is someone actually took their time, ran it over a joiner, ran it through a planer, and then sold it to you for quadruple the price. So what a planer does is for doing big wide boards, you can run it through there and it'll get this big surface nice and flat. But it does not get it square because if the wood is uneven, it'll just run it through unevenly. Now, what it doesn't, you know, it gets these 2 parts flat, but what a joiner's for is getting this part flat, because if you know, this only goes up to 6 inches. So say I have a 8-inch, a 2x8. Well, I can't run it through like this to square off my edges. I can run it through this way to square off these edges, but I can't square off my 2 top edges. So with this tool, you can simply run it over this head, and it's going to get caught because it's not running. Run it over this, and what that'll do, depending on what you have it set to, it has 16th all the way up to an 1/8, and that will take off that amount that you have it on there, and you can run it through until it is perfectly flat and square. The process now that I have these tools coming in from the sawmill would be rough board, goes into the planer on both sides to whatever dimension I want it. So, and then it would run into the joiner and make it square. So even though you're cutting that wood on the sawmill to real 2 inches by real 4 inches, by the time you run it through these tools, it will be pretty much a normal average day dimensional lumber, which is fine by me because even though we are milling our own wood, I still tell my brother to cut it to 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches because I like the idea of getting the most lumber I can out of the wood. So, and we've been building with 1.5 inch thick 2x4s for quite a while, and we've learned how to do that, and all of our measurements have kind of turned into that, and siding and 8 foot tall and 4 foot wide and 16 inches on center. So to have that full dimension, it kind of messes me all up again. So if you do get that rough dimension on the sawmill, by the time it goes through your planer and through your joiner, you will be back down to that size and nice and square. With this tool, I will be doing exactly pretty much like this router over here and adding a little workstation that is flat with it over on this side once I get this area cleaned out, and that will be for my joiner. Sorry, I blanked out.
Have to add another dust
So I will be adding one more dust collection port to the middle, just like that one. I just kind of widened it off there and added that in. So there will be one more. But so it will be joiner on this side. That way, if you see where I spaced these, that's why I wanted a long shot, because now here, going through a router, now this router, of course, goes this direction, which is fine, and then this joiner goes that direction. So all of the wood is flowing that direction. So with this, I can run 12-foot lumber because it'll run all the way across here and just onto the next table. So I've set it up so I can do route 12-foot lumber and joint 12-foot lumber. That way I can do that, because before in my other shop, even just a table saw or cut something on a miter saw, I would have to take it outside, get the stand, find something to prop it up, just do that. Where in this shop, I don't like it because when it's all set up, I can do up to 12 foot, which if I'm running something through a router table and it's longer than 12 foot, we got bigger fish to fry. So that is why I went with setting these up right there, because it's a good straight spot to run stuff through on both sides. That way you can get that optimal length. Alrighty, also this is the next tool, which is a 9-inch Wen bandsaw. Again, this is a Wen product. And this is just a little saw that I like to add to my arsenal for doing small, meticulous things like cutting little bow ties or whatever I might get into in the future, cutting dominoes, cutting mortise and tenon, doing stuff like that. A bandsaw can really help. Now, I know this is just an extremely small one compared to what some people have, but I don't really need a big one. Now, this is not going to be its home. As you can see, I just have it set on the router table, which would kind of be in the way of the flow of progress. Where this bandsaw is going to go is over here. I'm going to build just a little 4 by probably like 2.5 feet wide little bandsaw table, and that's why I put this blast gate right here, because I will be hooking up the bandsaw right there, and that is where that will go. And I am going to put a junction box on that wire before you say that. So this will go over there, and that will be its little section, and then this will be its own routing section. That way everything's out of the way. Alrighty, now we can move on to the next tool. Alrighty, also finally a non-Wen Chinese product. This is actually probably made in China too. But this is a Bosch router table that I have customized. Now, when I bought this router table, I was at first thinking to just hook up my little cordless Milwaukee router inside of here. But after reading further, I found out that I would probably, just for my own sanity and not driving myself insane by trying to figure out how to customize that in here, just buy the router that the table is meant for. I'll get that out of here so you can see. There's a little lever in. Wait 1 second. This pops open here somehow. Wait 1 second. I'm going to figure it out. There it goes. Okay. And then I'll just unplug it. If I can do that. Oh, okay. I'll just show it like this. So this is the router that I also bought in combination with this Bosch router table. Now this is just a little table, but what I did is I built it into this nice big long workbench. That way I can use it how I want to. And it has just the feathered normal, and then it has just a dust port on the back. It's just a nice little table. Now I bought this, I think this is 2.25 horsepower, 1/2-inch router. And this one is the router that pairs with this. So it's meant to fit their mounting plate that just clicks up in there. So it's really nice. And what's nice about this router is it has the Allen key that comes through the top of the table that lines up there. So you can use other routers, but what you have to do is unclip it and adjust it and put it back up in there. Where with this one, you just drop your Allen key through it and you can raise and lower the router to however high you want it without having to take it out, which is really nice. So on the front of here, up behind here, there's an extension cord outlet. And so you plug in the table and you plug in the router. That way it all goes to the same thing. That way when you turn this on, it's turning on both of them at the same time. So all we have to do is clip this back in there. Alrighty, so that is my router and router table, which it will be extremely nice for doing anything like tongue and groove or just putting simple bevels on the edges of boards. Having a beefed up router with that 1/2-inch collet in there will allow us to use big bits and have way more horsepower than using a smaller router and struggling through it. I've always wanted a router table because it makes it extremely nice for doing any of my tongue and groove projects or routing out 2x6s for doors and all the other crazy stuff that I do. So that will be a nice collection. That will be a nice tool to add to my collection. Also, as you can see, this workbench, unlike that one, is on caster wheels. So I have it on caster wheels because we are planning on adding plywood over the subfloor eventually. Plywood prices are coming down astronomically to where they just were like a year ago. So we are getting ready to add plywood. It won't be 3/4-inch cabinet plywood, but it will be, just since we have a subfloor that isn't perfect, but is halfway decent. It's all hand milled, and that was before we had a planer or a joiner or anything, and it was just our first time. So it is a little gappy in some parts, uneven, but as a subfloor, it will work fine for just running sheets of plywood over. So, since I'm preparing for the future, for when we do that, I want to plywood one side, move everything over, and then plywood the other side. So, as you can see, this table doesn't have any legs sitting on it, so all I have to do is pretty much just unscrew this table from here, and I can just roll this over there. That way, it'll be very easy to plywood underneath everything, and if I ever want to rearrange or do anything else, I can just unscrew this and roll these around to wherever I want to do. Say I have, for some freak reason, I have to route a 20-foot board. Well, if I can just unscrew this and roll this thing into the middle over here, this thing's 40 feet long, so then I could get 2 people and we could route a crazy long board. So that is nice. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the joiner. These caster wheels that lock, the front one does, that way it can't move anywhere. They're 5 inches, so it brings it up to 30 inch, so it's kind of like a low countertop height, as you can see. And I like that because unlike my miter saw bench over here, which I intentionally made 36 inches high, because it's taller and you're not doing as much, and if you're working on fine stuff, you don't have to bend over. But for here, for the tools that you're running it through, like a joiner or a router, if it's down here, where by the time you have the boards there, it's a very nice height to run it through. That way you can precisely see, and it's not lifting it up, you know? You can just, it's a very comfortable height to be running something through. That's what I found, you know, all that stuff's custom.